Thank you all for this opportunity. Thank you for the kind words, Brad, and thank you for the kind words about NFIB, Barry. Appreciate that. Appreciate your membership, Dave, as well. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to do something a little crazy here. I'm going to try to jump back and forth between a couple slides and me doing live, and I guarantee I will screw this up. So please be patient with me. But here goes, just so people can follow along a little bit better. Barry did provide me with some, I don't want to belabor these slides or anything like that. I do sense the frustration and the consternation, and I feel it because I go through it daily. To Brad's point about accuracy, we aspire to that, and we quadruple check everything we do, but the situation is very fluid. My recommendation to you is bookmark NFIB.com, because we are constantly updating those documents as opposed to having a printout and relying on it, because this stuff does change every day. I think one of the best examples of that is we finally received guidance earlier this week, I think just Tuesday, for how self-employed and independent contractors will apply for the Paycheck Protection Program loans. It's about time, because today the money's going to run out, but I am confident that Congress will reauthorize this. We have to get over some hand-wringing right now, some disagreements on spending on other programs than this, but I do think another $251 billion will be appropriated for this program in the near future. Negotiations are ongoing. I think about that. So here goes. I'm going to jump to a couple slides here. All right.
Hey, very good.
Wait for it. All right, so I did adapt a presentation here for NFIB and CiREB about this webinar, updates for small businesses on financial resources and status of these funds. And I do need to preface it this: while the information provided in this presentation is intended to be accurate, and as we said, we aspire for accuracy, it should not be considered legal advice. NFIB and the NFIB Small Business Legal Center cannot be held responsible for any errors or omissions, but please, please, please check NFIB.com for updates. So here's what I want to do, and I really want to focus on number 3, questions and answers. But just go very top line of the COVID-19 legislation, talk about the financial support that is available for small businesses, and conclude with Q&A. So there have actually been 3 laws enacted to combat or to respond to COVID-19. The very first one was a supplemental appropriations bill. I'll call that one COVID-1, and it was enacted on March 6, 2020. And what that did is it allowed for up to $7 billion worth of these SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loans, or EIDL, sometimes referred to as EIDL loans. So it allowed for up to $7 billion to be appropriated for that. And we'll go over that in just a moment, the status of that. The second one was what I call COVID-2, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. It was enacted on March 18th, 2020, which was a Wednesday, and it required businesses with fewer than 500 employees to provide up to 10 days of paid sick leave and up to 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. Now, to fund these paid leave mandates, there are payroll tax credits that are available through Form 7200. And it did provide unemployment insurance assistance to states to administer an expanded UI program. The one that gets the most attention, though, and rightfully so, is COVID-3, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, that was enacted on Friday, March 27th. This created the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, forgivable loans. It appropriated $349 billion for that forgivable loan program. In addition to providing different tax relief and incentives, as well as expanding unemployment insurance compensation and eligibility. That second bill basically provided some assistance to states, up to $1 billion per state, to administer the program. The third bill, or law, I should say, created the expanded eligibility. So jumping to the CARES Act, or COVID-3, again, here's some of the highlights of it. In addition to the forgivable loans that I just mentioned and talk about later, it provides the 2020 recovery rebates to certain individuals. These are the ones that we're hearing about this week more and more, starting to hit people's bank accounts, or an app that was created so if people don't have direct deposit, they can go to apply for those. These checks are up to $1,200 to individuals, $2,400 to couples, and $500 per child. But the eligibility completely phases out at $99,000 per individual, $198,000 for couples. It also extends business tax deadlines and provides certain tax relief. For example, payroll taxes may be deferred for the year 2020 and paid in installments in the beginning of 2021 and beginning of 2022. Again, it's just deferment. It's not really relief, but it's just deferment. And it also creates this employee retention tax credit up to 50% if you have a reduction in gross revenue in a quarter of 50%, you may deduct up to or get a credit of up to $5,000 per employee. But you cannot receive that tax credit if you accept a Paycheck Protection Program loan. It also restores the ability to carry back net operating losses, or NOLs, over the past couple years. That was changed in the 2017 tax law. This restores the ability to do that. And it fixes what was called the retail glitch from the 2017 tax law that allows for qualified improvement of properties for restaurants and retails to be deducted immediately, as opposed to depreciated over a 39-year period. And as I said, it does expand unemployment insurance eligibility and compensation, but it does include small business owners and self-employed individuals in this expanded UI pandemic compensation. So some of the financial resources, and I'm just going to quickly go through these because many are familiar with them. We have the economic injury disaster loans that was created in, well, it's been a long-standing response to SBA to disasters, but it was created, it was allowed for this broad disaster in this instance. We have the emergency EIDL grants that are advanceable and forgivable that are associated with those EIDL loans. And finally, we have the Paycheck Protection Program loans, the PPP. The Economic Injury Disaster Program, or the EIDL loans. These are low interest loans provided directly through the Small Business Administration. The maximum loans are up to $2 million, but that's not what's happening in reality. The interest rate for for-profit businesses is 3.75%. The terms can be up to 30 years, but they vary from business to business and application to application. And that's all kind of done through an SBA proprietary black box that nobody really knows the details. Loans smaller than $200,000 can be approved without a personal guarantee, and there are no early prepayment penalties. However, if you go to apply for one of these loans right now, this is the screen you will get. The SBA is unable to accept new EIDL COVID-19 applications at this time based on available appropriations funding. That's kind of the theme of this week, is small businesses are being shortchanged, unfortunately. This slide was provided to me by, or screenshot was provided to me by a member just last night who was trying to encourage his customer to apply for one. So NFIB wrote an angry letter to SBA earlier this week, criticizing their communication efforts on both application status, because small business owners are not receiving word that their applications are even being accepted, their loans are being processed. They really have no idea. Associated with this is these emergency grants you're supposed to get within 72 hours. Nobody knows what's happening to those. People applied at the end of March and still haven't heard anything from SBA. We've long known that the funding may not be there, but SBA hasn't told anybody. Anyway, it's just, you get my drift. So here is the EIDL grant with some edits that I recently incorporated this morning. So in theory, all of those applying for an EIDL loan will be eligible for up to a $10,000 emergency grant. And that, according to statute, is supposed to be issued within 3 days of the application being received. You can see I use my strike-through tool because nobody has received it within 3 days of application being received. In practice, there are reports from NFIB members and the media that are limiting these advanceable grants to $1,000 per employee. The up to $10,000 grant is forgivable, But again, it's coming in much less than people anticipated. These were heavily marketed as they are $10,000, $10,000. Now SBA is trying to get people and say, no, 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 we said up to $10,000. But it is limited because of the demand. Apparently, there's like $340 billion worth of demand for this $10 to $17 billion program. So we, again, also asked Congress, in addition to more Paycheck Protection Program loan funding, get more funding for these EIDL loans. But the communication efforts from SBA on the application status and the funding have been lackluster. You may use those EIDL grants for providing leave, maintaining payroll, meeting increased costs to obtain materials unavailable from the applicant's original source due to interrupted supply chains, rent or mortgage payments, and repaying obligations that cannot be met due to revenue loss. This eligibility for expenses is actually more expansive than that for the Paycheck Protection Program loans. And now we're shifting over to that. Who qualifies for a Paycheck Protection Program loan? It's businesses with less than 500 employees, or independently owned franchises with less than 500 employees, or accommodation and food services as each location has less than 500 employees. I think most importantly for this group, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals. This group became eligible just last Friday, April 10th. And 501c3 not-profits. You must have been in business by February 15th, 2020, and paid taxes on your employees or independent contractors. How much can I borrow? 2.5 times average monthly payroll from the previous year, up to $10 million. There actually was an article yesterday that because of the expanded eligibility of the second and third bullet you see here, that like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse got $20 million because of 2 of its subsidiaries. Potbelly Sandwiches got $10 million. Yes, they did allow big food service, big restaurants to get access to these, and they did take up considerable portions of the loan. For seasonal employers, the average total employees shall be calculated in the period between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019. So I thought this one was most important. This comes directly from the guidance from 2 days ago. Who qualifies for a Paycheck Protection Program loan for sole proprietors and independent contractors? I'm just going to read it directly, even though you're not supposed to do this in PowerPoints. I have income from self-employment and file a Form 1040 Schedule C. Am I eligible for a PPP loan? You are eligible if you were in operation February 15th, you are an individual with self-employment income, your principal place of residence is the U.S., you filled out a Form 1040 Schedule C in 2019. However, if you are a partner in a partnership, you may not submit a separate PPP loan application for yourself as a self-employed individual. Instead, self-employment income of general active partners may be reported as a payroll cost up to $100,000 annualized on a PPP loan application filed on behalf of the partnership. I do think that that latter portion for partnerships did get a bunch of people because when they originally applied on February 3rd for their small business, their banker may have told them, no, your partnership income, your guaranteed payments, that doesn't count. Well, now they're apparently saying, yes, it kind of does count for that first one, and it doesn't quite mesh. So, for example, I spoke to a farmer from Illinois who was told by his banker, nope, it's only the taxable payroll income on Form 941. Your payroll taxes, it's not your own income. Well, he may be SOL and his total loan amount was reduced by about $35,000. This is also from that guidance. How do I calculate the maximum amount I can borrow and what documentation is required? It depends upon whether or not you employ other individuals. If you have no employees, the following methodology should be used to calculate your maximum loan amount. Step 1, find your 2019 Form 1040 and look at line 31 for net profit amount. If this amount is over $100,000, you're not ineligible, you just reduce it to $100,000. If it's 0 or less, you are not eligible for a PPP loan, unfortunately. Step 2, using that, you calculate the average monthly net profit amount, divide step 1 by 12. Step 3, you multiply the average monthly net profit amount from step 2 by 2.5, because it's 2.5 times your payroll. And step 4, add the outstanding amount from the EIDL, if you did receive it, made between January 31st and April 3rd of this year, if you seek to refinance, subtract that amount from any advance under the EIDL COVID-19 loan. Does not have to be repaid, that emergency grant. What can it be used on? Can be used to retain workers, maintain payroll, or make mortgage payments, lease payments, or utility payments. I'll say you can make mortgage payments, but I'm going to put an asterisk next to that on the forgivable element of it. You must certify that the loan will support the ongoing operations of the business concern, and it can only be used for expenses incurred between February 15th and June 30th. What are the terms? Your payments will be deferred 6 months. That's what Treasury ended up saying, so ignore that up to 1 year, starting from the origination date alone, but the 1% interest rate is not deferred during those 6 months. The loan maturity is 2 years. No collateral is required. SBA guarantees 100% of the loan, and just like the EIDLs, there is no prepayment penalty. So here is, you could use your expenses. We went over that, but here's what's covered by loan forgiveness. It's basically the clock starts for loan forgiveness in the 8 weeks as soon as you receive the initial disbursement. That's your 8-week clock. So that ignore bullet number 2 here, because we did just recently learn that your 8 weeks start. You cannot choose your 8 weeks, although we're going to push for that, but it starts as soon as you receive that initial disbursement. You may use it on payroll costs, including health insurance premiums, payments on interest of a mortgage obligation, but not principal. Remember, that's what I asterisked in the previous. Rent and utilities. 75% of it must be used on payroll costs. 25% can be used on rent, utilities, and payments on mortgage interest. So where do you apply? The Paycheck Protection Program is not delivered through SBA. As you all know, it's done through financial institutions. This has been a frustrating experience for many, unfortunately. But more lenders are being approved by the Department of Treasury. I think it's up to over 4,000 lenders at this point in time. And actually, community banks have been receiving the best results, although the demand has been pretty overwhelming. But what is happening? The money is going to run out today. So here's a statement from late last night from Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and SBA Administrator Carranza. The SBA has processed more than 14 years worth of loans in less than 14 days. The PPP is saving millions of jobs and helping America's businesses make it through this challenging time. The EIDL program is also providing much needed relief to people and businesses. However, by law, the SBA will not be able to issue new loan approvals once the program experience a lapse in appropriations. As I said, the EIDL has already hit that. The PPP is going to hit that probably today. It's very close to it. So they urge Congress for additional funds. NFIB wrote a letter earlier this week urging Congress for immediate additional appropriations. And they close with the high demand we have seen underscores the need for hardworking Americans to have access to relief as soon as possible. So the final total is a little over 1.5 million businesses have received Paycheck Protection Program loans. We are almost at that $349 billion appropriations funding cap. In Missouri, this was as of April 13th, there were 34,088 approved loans, over $6.4 billion worth of approved dollars. Now, when they say approved loans and approved dollars, I don't think they mean money in accounts. I think they mean the SBA system has assigned a loan number to them. We've starting to hear glimmers of hope from members who said, yes, we're starting to get that money in our account, but it really has been kind of hit or miss. Others are saying, I don't know my status. Others are saying, I think my application was accepted, but I don't know. Again, SBA, they've had a monumental task, basically exponentially increase their responsibilities, but it has been somewhat frustrating. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully this works again. And I would love to open it up to questions, but what I will do first is pull up the questions that have already been provided to me, if that works for you, Barry. All right, we'll start there. And that is, okay. And Jamie or Barry, just let me know if questions have been submitted. I'm happy to take a break from here and jump to those, but I'll start with the very good questions here that were asked in advance. One of them being a 16-part question, so I appreciate that level of detail. All right. Let me see here. Yeah, small businesses without employees are feeling like they are getting a bill for the coronavirus and not a check. I think that perfectly encapsulates the feeling. Trying to help figure out how small real estate brokerage company without employees can get some of the governmental assistance without completing a bunch of forms or jumping through time-exhausting hoops. That would be worth the time and call in. The Paycheck Protection Program is probably the most efficient resource for this. I know the loan application period for self-employed individuals and independent contractors only began last Friday, April 10th. It is only a 2-page governmental application. However, banks may ask for additional information, including like a 1040C form or a 1099 miscellaneous form. But independent contractors are eligible, and self-employed individuals are eligible for this. With additional appropriations, I hope that that I think will be approved by later this week or early next week. I hope as soon as today, and that's what we are urging. That I think that would be the most efficient way. Dealing with the SBA on the economic injury disaster loans has been a very frustrating process for many NFIB members. As I said, the advanced emergency grants that were advertised as up to $10 billion, or actually, I'm sorry, that were advertised up to $10,000 are only about $1,000 per employee. So a self-employed individual, that would only be $1,000. But I would recommend the Paycheck Protection Program, but we need additional funding to that. And actually that reminds me, and maybe Jamie can help me with this. NFIB does have an action alert up right now that says it will shoot a message to members of Congress from the Missouri delegation that please approve these additional funds for the Paycheck Protection Program loan and the economic injury disaster loan. We can share that with Barry as a follow-up, but we'll also include that link in the chat feature of this thing. And I would really appreciate you all taking that time to either call the offices or just shoot this email because they need to hear about this frustration from business owners. All right. All right, the response we are getting from the government application for the $10,000 emergency grant is that you have to have employees. Many small businesses hire independent contractors, vendors, pay rent, or have business mortgages that will suffer if the small business owner is not saved. That's absolutely right. And as I said, it has been they have overpromised and underdelivered on that emergency grant. They even advertise on the SBA website. There's a button on the bottom when you go to lending options that says 10K. It doesn't say up to 10K. It doesn't say $10,000 per or $1,000 per employee. It says that. So that's why I would recommend pursuing the Paycheck Protection Program for forgivable loan versus the economic injury disaster loan program. Or maybe do it in that order. Do Paycheck Protection Program loan first, and then do the EIDL loan, although you can't apply right now. You'll get that screen, but have lower expectation for the EIDL loan. I should also say nothing precludes you from applying for both. However, you may not use both loans for the same purpose. In other words, if you are using the Paycheck Protection Program, if you do receive both, and that's a big if you may not use the Paycheck Protection Program loan on payroll and utilities, and also use the economic injury disaster loan on payroll and utilities. You can use the economic injury disaster loan on other accounts receivable or other debt obligations, but you may not use them for the same purpose. All right. It seems that the Paycheck Protection Program is all routed through the banks. who are also not only receiving large payouts, but also get to pick and choose the small business winners who get the loans and who do not. So many banks, especially in rural communities, are not SBA approved. It seems like rural America, small business entrepreneurs don't even have a place to go and at least get lip service. It's my understanding that more and more they started out with a network of about 800. They're up to 4,000 and adding like 200 lenders an hour. One other venue that is available now that wasn't available even last week is financial technology companies such as Square or PayPal, and I'm not endorsing any of them. Those are just the only two that I've heard participate, are now being onboarded. They are trying to get more lenders in the pipeline, and it's our goal to make it as broad as possible. We've actually heard good feedback from community financial institutions, community banks actually getting and taking care of their customers. You are absolutely right. Some of the large financial institutions, those that were too big to fail 12 years ago, were only helping customers if they had certain accounts. My understanding that some have backed off that a little bit. There was a kind of a class action lawsuit that challenged Bank of America for limiting applications. Unfortunately, it was thrown out in a district court in Baltimore. I assume the plaintiffs will appeal, but the frustration is palpable and is real. It's just that there's nothing that can force banks to participate.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
One thing that we might want to talk about, because it's a really important component to this whole thing, is the unemployment insurance issue. I know that we just had a article in the paper. Ours jumped a full point. We went from 3.5 to 4.5, which in the unemployment world is an incredible jump when you jump a whole percentage. You want to go over that just briefly? Because I'll tell you the other issue that some of our small businesses have expressed to me is they're kind of worried that you're going to be so cozy with this new unemployment fund that you're not going to want to come back to work. Or you're going to be making more money, but I keep telling them it's temporary. You know, they're not going to make that for the rest of their lives. But I have heard that. I've heard that expressed.
No, I know. I think that's a sentiment that's been repeated to me many times. A couple things on that unemployment issue. First, a little bit of background about what it does and why they got there. So they did create this emergency pandemic unemployment insurance compensation that adds $600 per week to regular state UI compensation. And Brad, I don't know if you know offhand what Missouri's regular rate is.
Yeah, we're about 300 a week, something like that.
Okay, so
something.
So you triple what the regular payment is. That does expire on July 31st, and people can only take it for a maximum of 4 months. So there's that. Now it could be extended, right? There, on the one hand, that does deter employees from trying to come back onto the rolls. It does not interact well with that Paycheck Protection Program loans, and even the proponents of the Paycheck Protection Program loans confess that. They said the Paycheck Protection Program, when they were negotiating that week of March 16th, all the ink was dry on March 16th. This unemployment insurance thing was a different issue that wasn't figured out until the 11th hour on March 18th. So they don't exactly get along well. We are making a point to Treasury and the SBA about that, saying hold harmless business owners who are trying to get their employees back, but employees decide, no, I don't want to come back. I'll go back just 2 months ago when unemployment, to Brad said, in Missouri was 3.5, nationwide 3.4. Finding qualified employees with small business owners' #1 problem. You know, there are some forecasts that unemployment could get up to 13 or 20% at this point in time. Mm-hmm. It's our hope that we open up sooner rather than later and we get back to a good economy, but there will be, you know, a lag, of course, and it could be a slow recovery. it is my understanding that nobody has received that extra $600 yet, because the Department of Labor is still providing guidance to states. They really haven't even provided guidance to individuals yet. These systems are so outdated that a lot of it is going to take time to get it all implemented. So while some people have been furloughed or laid off and trying to get these payments, many have not even come yet. I'm not sure what the status is in Missouri. I've also heard this from members of Congress, and I don't know if it's true. I've been meaning to find out, but I don't think I will know it's true until DOL comes out with more regulation, is that they've said that if you try to bring people back because of a Paycheck Protection Program loan, and they do not come back, they say, I'd rather get unemployment insurance compensation, they say there will be a remedy with the State Department of Economic Security or Unemployment Insurance, that they will no longer be eligible for that. Again, I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that from 4 members of Congress now. Here come my helpers. But there's that. But it is certainly a concern. It was pretty hastily crafted, that many members of Congress are very concerned about that interaction. But it is definitely a top of mind thing. There just isn't a great answer to it now.
Well, the other thing, Kevin, is too, I think a lot of employers are worried about their experience mod. That's, that had better be, they better hold up to their end of the bargain on that deal, because what it basically says is your rate will not go up according to what's going on. So, it would be a bummer we get through this thing and then all of a sudden your unemployment compensation rates go way up, through no fault of their own, of course. So.
No, that's right. And that's something that we'll be trying to guard against. But and that's one of these weird interactions about, the federal and the state interaction doesn't always work perfectly.
It's that time, Kevin. Our kids are joining the call.
Yeah, and we got a little music accompaniment in the background here. So I apologize for that.
A brief musical interlude.
Yeah. Maybe I'll take a couple more questions from the submitted ones. Okay, and this one has to do with the rebate payments that are just going around now. Many people, all gainfully employed, are receiving the $1,200 direct deposited checks today. They have not been harmed income-wise by what is going on. But those who file more complex returns, who write a check to Uncle Sam, have to wait until May or perhaps receive nothing or something. Who knows? Why is there not an application where the person can go see if they receive anything in May? And is there some place like H&R Block where you can go get a loan against the potential payout? I think just yesterday, Treasury launched what they call they're calling it an app. I don't know exactly what it is, but if you go to treasury.gov, they have a feature that says assistance for individuals. Click on that and they have some sort of where is my payment app. And I think people will be able to get a little bit ahead of the curve in the line by filling that out. And this is a good one that I think would be good to touch on as well. Please. Okay. Healthcare, the #1 issue for small businesses is healthcare. Premiums through the roof, deductibles escalating, prescription drugs growing astronomically. What are we doing now, or what we're doing now is not working. One health issue with the small business person and game over. This is not a way to live. What will the impact be on health insurance when it comes time to renew, or perhaps don't renew, and everyone becomes eligible for Medicaid or other programs? So this is an interesting point, and that's this is kind of the second level consequences. I just had a conversation yesterday with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the people who run healthcare.gov. There is a special enrollment period if someone does have a life-changing event, such as loss of employer-sponsored coverage, and they are trying to work creatively on how to think about that. That's in the near term and the interim. In the longer-term interim, upon renewal, that's a great point, because the government is kind of forcing insurance companies to cover the costs of testing and even treatment for COVID-19. If it spreads too far, if it's covered, that just means it'll be built into premiums next year. We won't really know until open enrollment, right before open enrollment begins in the beginning of November in the individual market, probably late October around Halloween, what the impact will be. But that is definitely something that is a consequence. We're going to continue our conversations with HHS and CMS to try to think about ways to do that. They are definitely concerned about those who fall into COBRA, which is very expensive without financial assistance, or those with fewer than 20 employees who are not covered by COBRA. So that's a very good point. That kind of covers a lot of them. There are some other ones about property taxes that I really fear I can't really answer on the as far as rentals go for tenants. You know, there is that my hope is that there is some property tax relief at the local level, at least deferments, and I know that's not great because and then that's something that I think everyone should advocate for because of all the events that are going on, but I really can't answer expertly about any thing there. I do realize that the 1031 exchange extension is probably not sufficient enough, putting a Band-Aid on it. They've done 3 laws so far, as I went over. Secretary Mnuchin calls it a baseball game. So he says we're only finished with inning 3. Hopefully we get halfway through the 4th inning now. That's with approving another $250 billion at least for the Paycheck Protection Program. But they will come back. It's now May 4th is the soonest that they come back, both the House and the Senate, to actually be here. They can still pass stuff by voice vote or unanimous consent, but they will be back, scheduled to be back May 4th, both of them delayed from the April 20th, but to May 4th, and they will continue more COVID responses. Now, there are many concerns with that, like deficit spending and others, but I think people are worried about the short term right now. And I apologize for the extra entertainment that's happening in my household now. We got the maracas out now, but that's probably a good time to kind of tie a bow on this, I think. Maybe that's the cue to exit. But I just wanted to say I appreciate the opportunity. I do encourage you all to contact your legislatures and tell them to immediately fund the Paycheck Protection Program with more funding. I think that would be a good interim step. I do feel all your frustrations. We do have resources at our website, NFIB.com. I realize this is an insensitive time to ask people to join, but we would love to have new members. We're only strength in numbers, so appreciate that. But thank you so much, Barry, for the opportunity.
Hey, Kevin, I just want to say thanks for everything, and I want to thank your crew there. You want to introduce them? What are their names?
This is my son Durwood. He's 5, and this is my daughter Edith. She's 3, and they make working from home fun, difficult but fun.
Well, that's what we're here about. Is not just us, but it's all about the kids because we want to leave America in a good place for them going forward. So, Kevin, I want to thank you and Brad and Jamie for doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I just want to say the NFIB is just a super organization. I would encourage everybody to go on NFIB.com and click on that one tab about the coronavirus because that'll be updated on a pretty regular basis. The other thing I wanted to kind of get back and right before we break is Brad had mentioned the unemployment assistance program. And in Missouri, John Seabree, who is our executive director for Missouri Realtors, just posted yesterday on the landing at 11:47 information about the pandemic unemployment assistance program. And he had mentioned $133, and then he mentioned $320 as potential payouts, but there were other programs that he mentioned. And so this is just coming available for independent contractors to apply for. So even though you're not employed, they're allowing independent contractors to go in and apply for this. So please check that out and make sure you're qualified. These are benefits you've earned, and you shouldn't feel bad about taking advantage of them. I know Diane and I will. I want to thank CiREB for helping organize all this, and I just hope you go to CiREB.org. And again, our fees are only $50 a year, but as you can tell, it's so important that you support organizations like CiREB and the NFIB right now, because they have your back and they're here to push and make sure you get the benefits. I really feel like we've kind of been left off the table, and it's with organizations like the NFIB that are pushing to make sure we get what we deserve. So again, thanks a lot, everybody. Kevin, anything in parting comments?
No, just thank you, Barry, for the opportunity. Thank you, Jamie and Brad, for facilitating. You know, we are. If you do have further questions, I recommend you email info@nfib.org. The reason I recommend that info@nfib.org is because there are about 12 or 13 of us that have access to that inbox, as opposed to just me. I'm still digging out emails from about 2 weeks ago, but we work on that email together. So additional questions, info@nfib.org. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody.
And Brad, thank you very much. And Jamie, I really appreciate all your support and help.
Thank you, Barry. We really do appreciate it. We really do.
Great. I think we kept it under an hour, so I think we're good to go. Kevin, you go play with your kids. I'm going to go play with my kids. Okay.
I'm going to try to burn off a little energy here.
All right, sounds great. See everybody.
Y'all be safe. See ya.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.